Hi, this Tuesday is a day for local elections in my community, and it got me thinking about one more aspect of how we make difficult decisions. I remember when I was a kid and going into being a teenager and I was becoming aware of the political landscape in America for the first time. And I remember hearing people described as being single issue voters. And the idea was that they were going to vote for the party or the politician who affirmed what they believed was right about a particular issue, and nothing would ever be able to sway them from that. Now, I don't know if this was always the case in the early to mid-90s when I was noticing this, or whether it was just my own evaluation, but I always got the sense that to call somebody a single-issue voter was seen as a little bit of an insult, as if you're saying you would be happy to swallow all kinds of terrible government so long as you get the thing you want on that one particular issue. In any case, I feel like single-issue voting is not only alive and well today, it's possible it's even more prevalent than it used to be, and I have to say this raises all kinds of questions for me. I guess I get really nervous whenever my community or my country wants to say to me, essentially, the one issue that you should really care about is conveniently the one issue that they really care about. And you get told a lot of times that no matter what you may think you're voting on, the real issue is this other thing over here. Now, that has always felt a little bit like manipulation to me, but I haven't always had the tools or the language that I've needed to really kind of dig into it. Now, in order to get into it, I want to read you some of the words of Ludwig Wittgenstein, who is one of the most important philosophers of the last century. And I want to apologize for actually just reading some of it to you, but I think it is really important. This is what Wittgenstein writes. Consider this example. If one says Moses did not exist, this may mean various things. It may mean the Israelites did not have a single leader when they came out of Egypt, or their leader was not called Moses, or there wasn't anyone who accomplished all the things that the Bible relates of Moses, or and so on. According to Russell, we may say the name Moses can be defined by means of various descriptions. For example, as the man who led the Israelites through the wilderness, or the man who lived at that time and place and was called Moses, the man who as a child was taken out of the Nile by the Pharaoh's daughter, and so on. And according as we accept one definition or another, the sentence Moses did exist acquires a different sense, and so does every other sentence about Moses. But if I make a statement about Moses, am I always ready to substitute some one of these descriptions for Moses? I shall perhaps say, by Moses I mean the man who did what the Bible relates of Moses, or at any rate, much of it. But how much? Have I decided how much must turn out to be false for me to give up my proposition as false? So is my use of the name Moses fixed and determined for all possible cases? Isn't it like this, that I have, so to speak, a whole series of props in readiness, and I'm ready to lean on one if another should be taken out from under me, and vice versa? Wittgenstein wants to apply this to other people in general as well, and he asks, would I be prepared to declare the proposition N is dead false, even if what turned out to be false is only something which strikes me as insignificant? But where are the boundaries of what is insignificant? The point of all this is that we all know that there are some things that we believe and there are some things that we value, and we know that we are prepared to give up some of those things in order to preserve other of those things. But do we always know, especially in advance, which of those are the most important and exactly how far we will go to preserve them? Are there any times, especially after a vote, where we find ourselves going down a road and we feel like it's too late to turn back, even if, having gone down the road a bit, we find we're giving up more than we would have necessarily found acceptable if it was proposed to us at the beginning? I think that there are times like that. And I suppose the real question that we should ask in those situations is the situation dire enough that I would bring myself to vote for the other party, whoever that may be, as a result of that? And I think the answer is oftentimes no. The problem seems to be that we often have to make a decision, and usually a binary decision that has only two choices, and the choices don't always line up with what we actually value or believe. And so we don't get to choose between one person who agrees with us completely and the other one who's the opposite of everything we believe. We often have to choose between two people, each of which agrees with us on some things, but we disagree with on a variety of other things. We're faced with the same thing when we're dealing with community referenda, or in my community, with like a bond issue for the school. I mean, what do you do if you're 100% behind about 75% of where the money is going, but not the other 25%? Or what if it's a 90-10 split? Because you can't give 90% of your vote to the yes group and 10% of your vote to the no. You have to either vote yes or no, and then live with your choice. Another difficulty with the binary choice is that sometimes you have to have a vote, and the whole national conversation is geared around the issue of, let's call it X. And the whole point of the vote is to get everybody who's on one side of X on the one side, and everybody who's against X on the other side. The only problem with that is that you may find yourself in a situation where X is just not the biggest issue to you, or maybe you just don't think that much about X, or maybe you could live quite well with either side of X. At the same time, perhaps you notice that issue Y, which really is your biggest concern, is not split quite the same way as X is. You may find that 75% of people who affirm your side on Y are on one side of X, and the other 25% are on the other, or again, 90 or 10. But if you're in that situation, what do? Do you go on the side where most people agree with you on Y, or do you loosen your grip on Y in order to go be on the other side of X? Another pressing social question is that even if you come to terms with how you're going to balance your conviction and your voting for X and Y, that how do you convince somebody else that Y is really your biggest concern and it's not X? It might be very difficult for you to do that, especially if X seems to them to be the only issue that's really worth discussing. I'm afraid I don't have a nice pithy summary to give you or advice to give. All I can do is draw attention to the complexities that are inherent in how we make decisions in our lives. If this can result in either some people being a little bit more reflective on their own decision-making process or having a little more grace and tolerance for people who make their decisions a different way, then that'll be enough for me. Well, that's all I have for this week. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to take up, please send me an email at pastorstevik@gmail.com. If you find these videos interesting or if you like them in some way, please consider liking and sharing them on the various social media platforms. If you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel where these videos are posted, you can do so at youtube.com/tstevik1. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.